Hello, I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters. We hope you'll continue to watch as we discuss issues facing our community and provide you with the resources and information needed to find solutions. Fentanyl, the powerful synthetic opioid, is up to 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Just a trace amount equal to 5 grains of salt is considered a lethal dose. And there are too many stories of victims who unknowingly ingested fentanyl with little to no justice for the families. But there is a fight here in North Carolina to save lives and get justice for those killed. And with us today is Barb Walsh, Executive Director of Fentanyl Victims Network of North Carolina, and to the show. Welcome. I'm sorry you're here for the reasons you're here. And my condolences because you lost your daughter to fentanyl. But thank you for what you're doing. I guess we start at the beginning, right? And that would be your daughter, talking about her.
Sophia, right.
And what happened?
August 16th, 2021, we had the Cary Police Department stop by our house at 8:30 in the morning and let us know that our daughter was dead because she overdosed. Which is a shock. First of all, to have the police show up at your house. The second is to get that with no more information. And we're like, that's not possible. That's not Sophia. And not only did Cary PD tell us, but she died up in Boone in Watauga County, which is 3 hours away. And she lived in Mecklenburg County in Charlotte.
Okay.
And that she worked there. So that's a lot of information to bring in and a lot of pain, and you just, that day becomes a blur, but it also is marked permanently in our brain. We didn't know what killed Sophia. We didn't know that fentanyl killed Sophia for 5 months because the person who had the fentanyl in his home did not tell the truth.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you would. So what happened? She did what?
We found out 7 months after she died.
7 months after
7 months after. We had to hire an attorney and a private investigator, and we were very fortunate that we had the funds to do that. Not everybody does.
Right.
Nor should it be required to find out how your loved one died, that you have to hire a private investigator. So what transpired was he had water bottles in his refrigerator that had the labels on them, and in the water bottles was diluted fentanyl. And fentanyl is odorless, colorless, tasteless. So there is no way an average person would know that fentanyl was in the bottle. Sophia was thirsty and she drank it all, and she died on his kitchen floor.
Oh my goodness.
He did not administer naloxone. He did not call 911 for 10 hours. So by the time they were called, there was no saving her.
Oh, see, I'm very confused. I'm a simple man. I'm going, why do you have to hire a private investigator to do something that I would assume the police would be doing? Can you get into that?
So, well, I had to learn a lot. We had never had to be involved with law enforcement. And I raised 4 daughters. We had a couple calls, oh, someone's drinking in the pool parking lot, but that's it.
Right.
So when we really needed them and needed to rely on them, they're 3 hours away from us, and they were making an assumption that Sophia was responsible for her own death. It was a choice that she made. They didn't spend any time to find out who Sophia was or what really happened. And so what we learned over a period of time was there was a lack of awareness about fentanyl in that community and how deadly it was, and that it was appearing in places and killing people. And the people who were dead didn't cause their own death. They didn't choose to die. And that was a problem that took us about a year to work through with law enforcement.
See, that's crazy. It really is. And I want to get into that, but I also, there's so much information here. I want to make sure we get it. When you talk about the number of deaths in North Carolina, I want people to understand it's quite a high number. I think it's going to blow their minds when you tell them that number.
Right.
How many?
So when Sophia died, the numbers didn't exist. Nobody was documenting this publicly. There was no place to find this information. And eventually, I found in the Department of Health and Human Services, in the Injury and Violence Prevention branch, they were actually compiling this data, but not releasing it to the public. And I think that's kind of a public safety message, is right now, based on the information that I have collected over the last 3 years, and I have a good relationship with this group now, they provide me with data quarterly. There are over 18,000 fentanyl deaths in North Carolina in 10 years. In Wake County, it's 977. That's an entire high school.
Well, and it's, again, this is, we talked earlier, and this is one of those shows I'm just so furious about the information I've already learned. These 18,000 deaths. Now, this is based on toxicology reports or autopsies that they've done, but they don't do that.
Correct. And those are
on all of the deaths.
Those are the 18,000 we know about.
So it could conceivably be
it is
higher.
much more, yes.
All right, now you mentioned Wake County, and if you take a look, and there's a map behind us, and you'll see it in more detail, that's the number of deaths in county. Where's the worst place in North Carolina to be if you happen to be unfortunate enough to lose somebody?
So we're just going to deal with population numbers and basic numbers.
Yes.
And so in Mecklenburg County, there is 1,309 fentanyl deaths.
Wow.
Wake County is second at 977.
Okay, now here's the question: how many of those individuals have gotten justice? Where the for instance, I made the analogy earlier that if you had an unsecured firearm in your home and someone used it and killed somebody, you would be held responsible. So the guy who's selling the drugs or giving the drugs to these individuals, how many of those people actually went to jail and were prosecuted? Let's go with Charlotte.
Charlotte. So state.
There's got to be a lot because there's 1,300 of them.
Zero. And
I'm sorry, I'm speechless.
In the state of North Carolina, every county has a sheriff, and there are 42 prosecutorial districts, and Mecklenburg, that has their own district attorney. So that district attorney is responsible for prosecuting these cases, but they have to have an investigation done by law enforcement that meets the elements so they can bring it to trial. There's a lot of law enforcement in Mecklenburg County. I have a hard time believing that all of the law enforcement has chosen not to do an investigation on these deaths. So now you look at Harnett County, which is a much smaller county. They have 266 fentanyl deaths, and they have 29 prosecutions, same time period.
Is that the stigma of the drug use, where the police, because you mentioned it earlier, it took a long time for you to find, get information on your daughter because there's an assumption I think made, rightly or wrongly, that, well, gosh, they took the drug, therefore it's their fault anyway, so what, let's move forward.
In some instances, there's that.
Is that true? Don't know.
Crystal ball.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But I will tell you from a personal experience, once people found out that fentanyl is what killed Sophia, their attitude changed. And
how did it change?
Because they're like, we didn't know Sophia did fentanyl.
Oh.
And I'm like, she didn't. But at the time, we didn't know how the fentanyl had gotten into her body.
Right.
Because nobody told us the truth. So there are a lot of instances where people die alone and the witnesses scatter. And law enforcement is just, oh, this is another person who was using a substance and died. Too bad.
There's so much more really to talk about here, and I want to talk about your network that you've created and the information available there, and more about this. And we have a couple of other moms that are going to be here to talk about their experience as well. So don't go anywhere, because we're going to be back with Barb Walsh right after the break.